Alright. Today I'm gonna start with actual books. Not because they're better anyway, actually because they're worse. So we're just gonna get those out the way. First of all is gonna be Driven to Distraction. I have a couple of therapists, and one of them is under the impression that I might have ADD. One of them is under the impression I might have ADHD. The other one doesn't think I have either. That it's kind of a catch-all for diagnoses they can't grasp. And I'm kind of feeling like it's the former. I did read it, I did mark it, I did go through some things. None of it sounded familiar to me. One thing that I did appreciate about reading it is that a lot of people misuse the term ADD, kind of like how they do OCD, so it's nice to kind of put that into perspective. And I do have one egotistical uncle who I legitimately put in his place a couple days after reading this, because he was like, well, people have too much ADD, and I was like, you don't know what that means. I just read a whole book on that, and he was shut right up, so that was great. Well worth it. Well worth it. That's all I needed. Along the same lines, I also know that ADHD is not well recognizable in women. Most of the diagnoses are meant for male-born peoples, not female-born peoples, and the coping skills are not accounted for that female-born people are more likely to have. And so I got Adult Women Navigating ADHD, but it wasn't what I was looking for. This one is better suited for women or female-born people who are already aware that they have ADHD, because it has more of like helpful tips on how to handle living with ADHD than it does diagnoses guidance. So if you already have ADHD, this has tips. A lot of them are pretty like straightforward, like eat better, get some sleep, you should exercise, which, you know, we've all heard forever. But sometimes it's not about what's being said, it's how it's being said and kind of when for you. So some of those might be helpful, some of them might not be. I have no idea, because I probably don't have ADHD, but someday I'll find out. The only other like book that I read is one called Small Gods by Terry Pratchett. I was pretty stoked to get this recommendation from a coworker because it's Terry Pratchett. He was involved in Good Omens. I'm interested. One thing about the story, aside from everything else, is it does have tulpas, which I appreciate. The spirits in Toilet Bound Hanako-kun and the gods and supernatural are tulpas, as well as the gods in this book, Small Gods. And I just love tulpas. I love that like power structure of belief itself is what brings power to the creature. Nothing else. It's just a really cool dynamic to have, and I was really happy to see that whole book was about tulpas, specifically the interactions of tulpas and the believers. Like, I thought that was really neat. Aside from that, though, I do think the book is worth just one read. For its size, it's really dense, and it felt like slogging through thick water. It was just not a fun read. It also felt like, as someone who grew up with Full Metal Alchemist and Punk Rock Jesus and my own heretical musings of the world based on my own childish intelligence, that it's preaching to the choir. It's got a lot to say about organized religion and how it corrupts and how it's brainwashing and all of this stuff, and I'm like, well, I knew that, now what? It has a lot of interesting musings about the human condition and kind of how we perceive things and justification and how that can just ruin you over time. It's just kind of interesting, but it's just not... It's not a fun read, and I don't think it's supposed to be, so it did really, really well. Alright, back into light novels. First one is Yokohama Station. Japan has been swallowed by a mysterious and ever-growing mass of buildings and structures called Yokohama Station, from which it originated. People can enter the station, they can be born in the station, but to those outside, it's just a mystery. And there are guards, like mechanical guards, that keep people in or out depending on what's required by the station. Our main character was born on the outside. He receives a special ticket to get inside, so we get to explore inside the station from the perspective of the outside. This novel has a lot to say, but not a lot to show, and I imagine that people who read it in the original language know the names of certain areas, and so that alone probably instilled like a mental image of things that I didn't get. And so the way that I perceive this book and the way that anyone else would is probably very different. Because I just found it very dingy in like a really like interesting way. Like a dingy, gritty kind of like uniquely strange setting. Which it's supposed to be, you know? One name that stood out to me was the Kanto region, because of Akudama Drive. The Kanto region plays a pretty huge role in that. I also realized because of that this novel is more cyberpunk than sci-fi. And I started to muse on how specifically Japanese media, whenever it comes to sci-fi and cyberpunk, tends to focus or have a diversion to or its roots in isolationism. The only one that kind of tripped me on that theory was Akira, which is still, in theory, kind of isolationist in how it feels, but more like No Man's Land than like true isolationism. Inconclusive theories, but really fun, and brought on entirely by this book. So jumping off into light novels, one that I picked up from Amazon was The Dragon Soulmate is a Mushroom Princess, and I distinctly felt with this one that I was missing something culturally. Like there was something implied that I was not getting. And I've seen that kind of detail of like mushrooms in like anime before. Not frequently, but like I distinctly remember Tamaki and Oran High School Host Club, his dramatic dismal moments. He would go off in the corner and be like cultivating mushrooms. And it was just kind of like a little like running joke that we understood enough, but I feel like there's something distinctly missing that I did not realize was missing in the running joke that I am now confused about because of this light novel, which I haven't explained. Regardless, this is a story about a girl completely lacking in confidence, but very much having the ability to grow mushrooms. She goes through a traumatic experience, and she meets an unusual prince. What I liked the least about this story, nothing to do with the mushrooms, is the melodrama. Not drama, melodrama. It completely lacked poise. It didn't have any maturity to it. It felt very high school. It just didn't... It felt repetitive too, which is really saying something, because sometimes repetitiveness is part of character growth in a way. Like, let me think here. In The Male Lead Is Mine, they had the letters back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and that's kind of repetitive. But this is, like, annoying repetitive. The other thing is that because the main character didn't believe anything and was so unsure of herself and just very, very lacking in self-confidence, that perspective led to the reader not really believing in it, and it kind of made the romance premise fall apart. Like, in The Male Lead Is Mine, you see from, like, both sides, right? So you know he's actually kind of interested, she's interested. Whenever they meet, they've been talking for long enough and have built up this interest that them kind of just immediately becoming more intimate makes sense. But in this one, the switch seems to be... Like, I still have my doubts. I was like, but are you sure about him, though? Because I feel like you're not, and therefore I'm not. Why are you suddenly sure whenever I'm not sure? Yeah, no, it's just not. It's just not a great... It's not well written. It's lacking context. I don't know what the mushrooms mean. Don't bother reading it. Alright. Little Princess in a Fairy Forest. On the night that the king and queen and everyone in the castle are killed, only the princess and one of her knights escapes into the Black Forest. There they meet the lover of fair maidens, the protector of the pure, the dragon of the forest. Despite their vast differences, the knight and the dragon form a pact to protect the princess and to eventually take her back to her place on the throne. It's a sweet little story. The interactions are cute. It's very uniquely sweet, I guess, in like a very like simple fairy tale kind of way. It did take me forever to read. Never once did it grip me and just push me all the way through. I read all kinds of things in between gaps in this. It's fine. Alright, next is Fairytale for Wizards. This is a story of a young girl, Azriel, who has lived through a series of terrible circumstances and is currently living through quite a bad one, when she is saved by an all-powerful wizard. Arguably the only all-powerful wizard. She unlocks her hidden memories of when he was her guardian. And that's kind of this whole first volume. This story is kind of slow. It's not very gripping. It has the distinct problem of an emotionless, detached, immortal male and a girl who has to live in reality. And so it ends up being this thing of where, like, this literal child is somehow more emotionally responsible than this, like, thousands-of-year-old wizard. And that just doesn't feel great. It also feels like it could eventually have a romance that it should not have for any reason, which I do not like the energy of being even somewhat present. So if you want to read a story kind of like this, that's much purer and better and all around more wholesome and generous in the familial ties and just all around sweeter too. I recommend The Archmage's Daughter. I don't think it's something you can buy as a novel. I think it's just a manhwa right now, but it's delightful. So, far better recommendation for you. Alright, I also read My Happy Marriage Volume 2 from Amazon Kindle. I enjoyed this one, just not as much as the first one. What I liked in the first one was kind of the interactions with the integral couple and just how they slowly got over their very similar personality problems. But this story had more to do with outside conflict, which was fine. It just didn't give us a chance to do that character growth stuff. So, not quite as good. Alright, Demon Lord 2099. Demon Lord Veltol is vanquished by the hero Graham in a legendary battle. 500 years later, Veltol returns to a very different world. He was Demon Lord previously in a very high fantasy world, and in the meantime, the planes of reality have, like, conjoined, kind of, and, like, layered upon each other, And so a very technological world has merged with a very high fantasy world to make kind of this strange cyberpunk, unique high magic world. And it ain't meant for him no more. And so he fumbles, he struggles, he fails, he gets kicked in the dirt, very literally at one point. 2 points. 3 points? It's fine. And his one very loyal vassal, Machina, and him figure out how to navigate this new reality and overcome certain challenges that it is presented to them specifically. I liked this one quite a bit. I didn't necessarily expect that I would, because it is a male-led story. I think what I liked most about it is how it wasn't at all sexualized with any of the female characters, and if anything, his beauty was the most mentioned. The way that he gets by in the world is really funny. I actually really appreciate that. It's not quite realistic knowing the world that we live in, but that's fine. I thought it was cool. It's a fun little world. It's a fun little story. I'm probably gonna get the second one. Sometimes you just need a little bit of sci-fi, and you would like to have sci-fi that doesn't have women being sexualized every single page. So, I liked it. That's what I wanted. Right, Accomplishments of a Duke's Daughter, number 5. This one wraps up Iris's story, whichever way the tidings may befall her. For this one, there was quite a lot going on. One really harsh revelation after the next. It was riding waves the whole way there to the end. I'm really happy that it's over the way that it is. Like, I'm glad that it wrapped up so cleanly, so nicely. There is a 6th one, which I already pre-ordered, and then I realized the story was done, and I was confused. But it's about her mother, so I'm excited about that. It's a prequel. I'm just kind of happy that I get to just go back and reread it now. Because I spent so much time reading and rereading what I could of the manga. But I mean, the manga only went to probably the third book, I think, where I was, and I was like, man, I'm never gonna get to see the end of this story. But I have now. So what's up? That's what you get for reading the light novel. You get to know what happens in the end. We love that. Okay. So another one I found is The Drab Princess, Black Cat, and a Satisfying Breakup. I love this one. A sweet girl learns that her betrothed loves another girl. As the prince, he cannot break the engagement, so she dutifully searches for a way. A little black cat helps her along, and it's a very sweet story. It does move a little bit repetitively, as sometimes one of the scenes will be shown several times through, like, different perspectives. But I mean, I didn't find that annoying anyway. And if anything, I found it kind of enriching, because one of the girl's problems is how she views herself. And so to then see her from a different perspective gives you that realization of how her views are skewed. It wouldn't work in, like, a high action story, but because it's a soft, kind of, like, slow character growth type story, it's kind of sweet and intimate, and that's fine. I really, really liked this story. I really, really loved the black cat. I thought it was super cute, and I'm so excited to read more. I can't even pre-order more right now, and it crushes me. It just crushes me. And so I will eventually order more. I also read some manga, one of which was Nana. Half of this manga is about a girl named Nana, a student living as best she can, trying to find love and herself. The other half is about a girl named Nana, a singer who found love and then lost it, and now has to double down on her convictions. I don't remember where or how, but I've been seeing little snippets from like the Nana anime, and honestly it looks really good, and I've heard that it's just heart-wrenching, which makes sense having read this. I don't remember how I got a hold of this either, but I probably won't continue the manga. I'll probably go watch the anime instead, but this was nice to have to prompt me towards believing that I would like the anime. So I also got these. I don't remember if I included this one in my ideas of the first one, which of course is a magnificent story, but I also read this one, so we're gonna talk about this one, assumed to be perfect, this one, almost as perfect. It's kind of like the second volume of My Happy Marriage. It doesn't feature all that much of the integral couple, and it has more like outside problems, but I mean, it's still good. I still liked it. It was wonderful to see them some more, and I think that the new character introduced will be interesting to see more of. One of those last pages, I was like, alright. I also read Mizuno and Chayama. It is a manga. It's a little long, but it's a single volume, and it is a Romeo and Juliet story in which two girls from a small town struggle to overcome their family's political conflict. And it's gay. It's a really fast read, it's really cute, it's one complete story. I loved that the girls were kind of doing both their own thing and going out of their way to comfort and be there for each other. They were both selfish and realistic and harsh girls, and also very sweet and somber and empathetic. It's a very character-focused story, and we like that. But yeah, that's it. I read some books, told you about them, rated them. Bye. Too many words, Obi, too many words. Okay.